Trump just declared war on Antifa.
What I'm gonna do is push the front door open. We got fumes coming out the front door.
Federal agents stormed suburban homes in Dallas and Richmond before sunrise with tactical teams, drones, and armored trucks. The targets? Not drug cartels, not gang bosses, but suspected Antifa operatives. In Alvarado, Texas, they found body armor caked in mud. In one house, several ammunition, spray paint, tactical gloves, as well as much more sophisticated weaponry. The feds say it was a war chest.
It was a planned ambush with the intent to kill ICE corrections officers. Make no mistake, this was not a so-called peaceful protest. It was indeed an ambush.
Now, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, as well as several domestic attacks spanning decades, Trump declared war, signing an executive order branding Antifa a domestic terrorist organization.
Just a little bit ago, President Donald Trump signed this executive order designating the Antifa movement as a domestic terrorist organization. The White House said promising actions targeting left-wing groups following Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Who are they?
Well,
and where's the money coming from? Is it foreign entities?
Yeah, you're going to find out, and we're going to find out in great detail. And it surprised me that Biden wouldn't have done it, because it really became hot over the last 3-4 years.
And what followed? The largest left-wing manhunt in American history. Over 1,000 arrests, federal raids in Texas, Virginia, Oregon, names, networks, and funding trails exposed. And what they found goes way beyond protests. Trump just signed an executive order designating Antifa a terrorist organization. But to understand how we reached this point, we need to go back to September 10th, 2025. In case you forgot, that was the day Charlie Kirk was assassinated on a Utah campus. One gunman, one pull of the trigger, and within minutes, the political ground in America shifted. Though no one knew it yet, what looked like a campus shooting would be connected to Antifa, a movement that began as a patriotic fight against fascism, but along the way, morphed into the very thing it claimed to oppose.
Well, first, their ideology and their methods and tactics, it's all meant to deceive the public. They want people to believe that to be part of Antifa simply means to oppose fascism, which is why you see lies from journalists say things like, well, the soldiers who fought against fascism during the Second World War, they were Antifa. And that is part of the deception. Antifa, in the contemporary form, the modern form, is a far-left, violent extremist, anarchist, communist movement, ideology, network, all of the above.
All of their dangerous ideology came to a head on that tragic day. The first viral clip showed students running, police swarming the area, and Kirk's body on the ground. Within hours, headlines called it an assassination, a conservative firebrand taken out in broad daylight. Online, Antifa-aligned accounts didn't hold back. Some celebrated, others posted memes calling him a fascist pig. But inside the private chats, panic spread. They thought it would be just another assassination swept under the rug. Instead, even apolitical businesses were issuing statements of support for Kirk's family, and employees caught praising the shooter were being fired. For Antifa cells, the murder backfired overnight, and Trump seized the moment.
Before leaving for New York City, President Trump did sign an executive order designating Antifa a terrorist organization.
He called Kirk a martyr, then signed the executive order that would flip Antifa from a loose protest movement into the #1 domestic target of the FBI. The tone was set. What started as a campus shooting was about to spark the largest federal crackdown on the radical left in American history. But before Kirk was assassinated and Trump signed the EO, federal agents had already been tracking a pattern of escalating attacks. The trail runs back years, and the list reads more like a terror dossier than a protest history.
Federal authorities provided new details about an ambush attack on officers at an immigration detention facility in North Texas. A police officer was shot in the neck outside the detention center in Alvarado Friday.
Alvarado, Texas, July 4th. Just after 10:30 at night, Antifa carried out a targeted attack that could only be described as chilling and carefully executed.
Officials say around 10:30 p.m. on July 4th, a group of 10 to 12 people dressed in black military-style clothing shot off fireworks and vandalized the facility.
At first, it looked like another protest. Fireworks lighting up the sky, spray paint scrawled across ICE vehicles with words like ICE Pig and Traitor. But federal investigators say it was a setup from the start.
Officials say this was a ruse to draw out the ICE personnel, and it worked. 2 unarmed corrections officers went to speak with the vandals. Meanwhile, the group signaled a gunman nearby.
The hidden gunman opened fire, sending round after round right through the parking lot. One officer was hit, and he went down, his bodily fluids pouring from a gunshot wound to the neck. It was so bad that Alvarado police had to be called in, but when they rushed to the scene, they had no idea they were walking into an ambush.
Alvarado police responded to a 911 call at the facility. When the officer got there, he was shot in the neck, and another assailant fired 20 to 30 rounds at the unarmed corrections officer.
The attackers scattered, but deputies swarmed the area. 7 suspects were captured crawling through the mud, wearing body armor and carrying radios. Others were stopped trying to flee the premises with rifles, Kevlar vests, and more ammunition in the back seat. Days later, raids on their homes turned up even more disturbing materials.
Over the course of the weekend, additional related searches occurred. We found masks, goggles, tactical gloves. We've one residence of one of the defendants. There was additional body armor. There was a cache of 9 additional weapons, spray paint, fireworks, and again, insurrectionist material.
Those members of Antifa did not get away with their cruelty. 10 suspects were overall and indicted on attempted murder and terrorism charges.
This will not be tolerated. Those who use violence against law enforcement officers will be found, and they will be prosecuted with the toughest criminal statutes and penalties that we have available to us.
But this wasn't the first time federal agents had faced fire from Antifa. In February 2024, a transgender Antifa terrorist detonated an explosive device outside the office of Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall.
Attorney General Steve Marshall says some kind of explosive device was found outside his office on Saturday morning. We understand that was later detonated.
A year earlier, Antifa radicals laid siege to a police training site in Atlanta using Molotov cocktails, fireworks, and booby traps to stop construction on the site. Unfortunately, that was not the end of Antifa's reign of terror. The list goes on. They firebombed pro-life clinics in Florida, set off pipe bombs at pro-Trump events, and armed assaults in Portland that left both police and civilians wounded. In fact, DHS and the FBI sent out alerts, warning as early as 2016 that Antifa groups were moving from protests to lethal violence. But no one listened. For years, critics dismissed them as just black-clad agitators. But inside federal case files, the picture was darker. They found small Antifa cell networks scattered all over the country, each of them charged with various responsibilities. Some were in charge of stockpiling weapons, raising funds online, while others used encrypted apps like Discord to recruit new members. But after the July 4th ambush, it wasn't just the FBI and other governmental organizations aware of the hidden nature of Antifa. Now, the American people could see them for what they truly were, an organized criminal network willing to do anything to achieve its sinister goal, a group Trump was now determined to destroy. Though the tragic events of July 4th set the tone for what was to come, Charlie Kirk's assassination was the breaking point. It proved Antifa wasn't just smashing windows or burning cars. They were armed, trained, and willing to take lives. Trump's signed order gave the green light, and within hours, the crackdown began. Richmond, Virginia woke up to armored trucks blocking suburban streets and helicopters circling low. Dozens of homes were hit at once. Neighbors filmed SWAT teams smashing through front doors, dragging out suspects in black hoodies and tactical gear.
Hands up, open the door, and walk out.
By the end of the day, more than 200 people were zip-tied, questioned, and booked across Virginia alone. Hundreds of agents, with support from multiple federal law enforcement agencies, including ICE and National Guard troops, participated in this operation, aiming to disrupt planned actions and dismantle Antifa's cell networks. Officials called it the most aggressive domestic counter-terror sweep in decades, second only to post 9/11 operations. The raid showed Antifa cells were armed and organized, but inside Washington, a bigger question was being asked. If they could amass all of that weaponry, who was paying for it all? And how have they managed to stay out of the FBI's radar while actively funding a domestic terrorist group?
President Trump has promised he will directly address the dark sources funding and supporting this domestic terrorism to finally restore order in our country. The American people can expect further, very strong action on this very soon.
When agents cracked open the seized laptops in Virginia, they weren't just looking at memes and encrypted chat logs. They found financial ledgers, donation links, bail fund receipts, and transactions routed through anonymous online platforms.
So it's really interesting because Antifa has several different sources of funding. One of the ways that I remember for back in my day, a lot of people did have jobs and they were self-funded.
According to former Antifa member Gabrielle Nadalis, the story about activists being self-funded was mostly a pretext, a cover for something much bigger. You see, not having a direct chain of command keeps them from being labeled terrorists. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was how high Antifa's funding goes, with Gabriel saying it even goes as high as members of Congress.
I remember several years ago that you had Representative Ocasio-Cortez supporting people to donate to bail people out of jail who were affiliated with Antifa. And there's also book author Mark Gray, who wrote the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, who actually donates a proceed of his books to certain unnamed Antifa-esque organizations.
What investigators realized was that Antifa wasn't funded by a single pipeline. It was a patchwork, grassroots cash from members with day jobs, activist-driven bail campaigns, and high-profile figures channeling support into the shadows. Together, it created a war chest hidden in plain sight. A war chest Trump is determined to expose and destroy.
Who are they?
Well,
and where's the money coming from? Is it foreign entities?
Yeah, you're going to find out, and we're going to find out in great detail. And it surprised me that Biden wouldn't have done it, because it really became hot over the last 3-4 years. It surprised me that Biden wouldn't do it, but then as I got to know him, first of all, he didn't call the shots. He wasn't calling the shots. But as we got to see what was happening in Biden's group, Antifa plays perfectly for them, absolutely perfectly. But it's a terrorist organization, in my opinion, and we're going to find out. All those questions are going to be answered.
On Capitol Hill, Senator Ted Cruz echoed the same sentiments. Follow the money. The violence we are seeing is not purely organic. They've committed acts of violence all over the country. I believe there is considerable money funding it. For Trump's DOJ, that meant one word: RICO.
Instead, what they should be using is the RICO acts, which were the originally mafia targeting acts that are about racketeering, organized crime, and chasing down money and money laundering and money going to fund criminal enterprises, and use that.
The same legal weapon used to crush the mob in the 1960s was now being pointed at left-wing networks.
And LBJ instructed J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, to use the Civil Rights Act to go and prosecute and smash the Klan. And that's exactly what they did. Now, there's a similar parallel here, but I don't think you could use the Civil Rights Act here.
If Antifa could be tied to coordinated funding, pallets of bricks, caches of gas masks, encrypted supply chains, prosecutors could charge not just the fighters in the street, but the donors, organizers, and facilitators behind them. Federal officials framed it as simple math. Every raid, every arrest, every cache of weapons can be traced back to someone signing checks, because without money, there would be no gear, no bailouts, no ambushes. Trump doesn't just want the arrests of foot soldiers, he wants the networks dismantled. Now, Washington is promising to hit them where it hurts most, in their wallets. The money trail made it clear Antifa was more than a street movement, it was a network. And networks are what federal prosecutors know how to dismantle. You see, after dealing with the mafias in the 90s and then the cartels right after, the US developed a playbook of how to bring organized crime to its knees. And this case was no different. The more information they gathered about Antifa, the easier it was for them to map who was paying, who was moving supplies, and who was giving orders. The veil of anonymity that protected Antifa activists for years was being ripped away, and ICE joined the fight, not just chasing immigration cases, but tracking Antifa operatives who were using smuggling routes and fake IDs to stay underground. Homeland Security labeled the crackdown counterinsurgency at home. Officials compared it to the early days of the cartel wars. Small raids at first, then widening sweeps as networks unraveled. This was no longer about stopping protests. It was about dismantling what Trump now called a domestic terrorist enterprise. By the end of September, the numbers were staggering. More than 1,000 arrests had been made, dozens of raids in Texas, Virginia, and beyond. Court filings stacked with names, screenshots, and bank records. What began with the assassination of Charlie Kirk had spiraled into something bigger, a nationwide counterinsurgency. For Trump's supporters, it was long overdue. They saw Antifa as a violent insurgent army finally being treated like terrorists. For critics, it was a warning that a government crackdown could blur the line between security and suppression, sweeping up not just radicals, but ordinary protesters and donors caught in the dragnet. The raids may have ended with zip ties and headlines, but what they uncovered is far from over. Today, it's Antifa. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. So ask yourself, did America crush an insurgency, or did it just unleash a war that can never be contained? Leave your comments down below, and to stay locked in on what's coming for Antifa, check out these videos.